The Nexus Prime diplomatic hub occupied a sweet spot in space, where three major trade routes converged, which was either brilliant strategic planning or cosmic coincidence, depending on who you asked and how much they'd had to drink. It was a massive rotating structure that looked like someone had convinced a flower to bloom in zero gravity while also being a shopping mall. 17 different species maintained permanent missions there, each one convinced their presence was crucial to galactic stability, which was the kind of self-important thinking that made diplomacy simultaneously necessary and insufferable. The station operated under something called the Transparency Doctrine, which was exactly what it sounded like, but somehow more annoying in practice. Every corridor, every conference room, every cafeteria where beings argued about protein paste flavors, all of it monitored by approximately 40,000 cameras linked to AI systems so sophisticated they could detect a lie before you finished telling it. Privacy was a relic, the doctrine claimed, a primitive holdover from species still working through their trust issues. Evolved civilizations embraced total transparency because they had nothing to hide. The humans had been part of this arrangement for 18 months. Which in galactic terms was roughly equivalent to showing up to a party where everyone else had been friends for centuries and expecting them to care about your opinions on the music. Earth had fought hard for membership, jumped through diplomatic hoops, agreed to technology sharing arrangements that were decidedly one-sided, and generally prostrated themselves before the galactic community in exchange for the privilege of being tolerated. Because that's what it was. Tolerance. Not respect, not partnership. The other species looked at humanity the way you might look at a clever dog that had learned to use the toilet. Impressive for what it was. But let's not pretend it's ready for advanced conversation. Kai Okafur worked in the Data Reconciliation Bureau, which was a fancy title for mixed person who makes sure the numbers match when different species submit trade reports using incompatible mathematical frameworks. She had a degree in xenoeconomics from Lagos University, spoke 4 Earth languages and passable Zelthoran, and had scored in the 98th percentile on her diplomatic service exams. None of which mattered, because to the other species on Nexus Prime, she was human, which meant she was basically furniture that sometimes filed paperwork. She'd been there 11 months. 11 months of smiling through condescension so thick you could package it and sell it as insulation. 11 months of having her work double-checked by species who couldn't count past base 12 without assistance. But were absolutely certain humans were prone to errors. 11 months of being the diversity hire in a galaxy that had invented diversity before Earth discovered agriculture. The Tamurk Toxarians were the worst about it, which was saying something given the competition. They were crystalline beings, roughly humanoid in shape but composed of some mineral compound that refracted light in ways that made looking at them feel like staring into a kaleidoscope having an identity crisis. They'd been part of the galactic community for 600 years, controlled mining rights to systems rich in exotic elements, and had apparently evolved past the need for basic courtesy. Ambassador Vrith was their chief delegate, a towering figure whose crystalline structure shifted through colors that supposedly indicated emotional states, but mostly just gave Kai headaches. He'd made his opinions about human membership clear from day one. Specifically, his opinion that humanity had been admitted far too early and should spend the next century proving they deserved a seat at the table. He'd cornered her in the commissary 3 weeks ago, blocking her path with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. The human computational errors in last quarter's lithium exports are unacceptable. Your species' mathematical frameworks are clearly insufficient for galactic commerce. Kai had pulled up the reports on her tablet, highlighted the discrepancies, and shown him that the errors originated from Toxarian merchants using outdated conversion rates. His crystalline face had done something that might have been embarrassment or might have been rage. hard to tell with a species that communicated partially through light refraction. "You dare correct me?" "I dare do my job, Ambassador. The numbers are right there." He'd leaned closer, and his voice dropped to something cold enough to frost circuits. "Humans should learn humility before competence. You are here by our grace, not your merit." Station security had logged the interaction as a cultural misunderstanding. Kai had logged it as Tuesday. Her only real friend on the station was James Park, who worked in the communications liaison office and had the kind of face that made people trust him right up until he smiled. And you realized he was calculating 7 different ways to ruin your day. He'd done 2 tours with Earth Intelligence before transferring to diplomatic service, which meant he had skills that weren't listed on his official file, and a paranoia streak that would make conspiracy theorists look casual. "He's escalating," James said over lunch in the human section of the commissary, where the food was at least recognizable, even if it tasted like sadness. 3 incidents in 2 weeks. That speech at the Trade Committee meeting where he implied human statistical inadequacies were destabilizing commerce. The complaint he filed about your confrontational attitude. Now this thing with the lithium reports. He's just a bigot with a platform. The galaxy's full of them. Bigots with platforms are dangerous, especially when they have pull with station administration. James pushed his food around his plate. "Watch yourself. These people play for keeps, and they don't think the rules apply when dealing with us." Kai had shrugged it off, because what else could she do? File a complaint? Station security thought human concerns were adorable. Request a transfer? Earth had 700 people competing for every diplomatic posting. Keep her head down and do her job? That was the plan anyway. The message came 3 days later, marked urgent, requesting her presence in Conference Room 7 Delta for an emergency reconciliation meeting regarding the Toxarian trade dispute. Conference Room 7 Delta was in the maintenance sector, which was weird, but the message had proper authorization codes and an official seal. So Kai gathered her files and headed down. The maintenance sector was always quiet during Delta shift. Most of the automated systems ran themselves, and the species who staffed the repair bays preferred working when station traffic was light. The corridors here were more utilitarian, less of the decorative architecture that made the diplomatic sections feel like an art gallery designed by committee. Conference Room 7 Delta was at the end of a long corridor lined with pipes and junction boxes. The cameras were there, of course, blinking their steady presence, recording everything, ensuring transparency, protecting civilization. Kai palmed the door control and walked into a room that held 5 Toxarian delegates and absolutely no conference setup whatsoever. Her brain processed the wrongness instantly. No table, no data displays, no reason for this to be a meeting. Just 5 crystalline figures arranged in a semicircle that blocked the exit. And Ambassador Vrith standing in the center with something in his posture that made every combat training course she'd taken suddenly feel very relevant. "Ambassador, there seems to be some confusion about—" "No confusion." His voice was different, quieter, more focused. A teaching moment, perhaps. A lesson about knowing one's place. She reached for her comm unit. The nearest Toxarian moved faster than something made of crystal had any right to move, and grabbed her wrist. Crystalline fingers that could cut if pressed wrong, holding tight enough to bruise. "The cameras," Vrith said conversationally, gesturing to the blinking lights above them, "are about to experience a remarkable technical failure. Quantum interference, the report will say. Such things happen in maintenance sectors with all this equipment running. Very unfortunate." Kai tried to jerk free. Another Toxarian grabbed her other arm. The room tilted as they forced her to her knees. and some distant part of her brain was cataloging this, filing it away. This is an assault. This is premeditated. This is exactly what James warned about. But the immediate part was focused on breathing, surviving, finding an exit that didn't exist. They didn't monologue, didn't explain themselves, just methodically demonstrated what happened when humans forgot their place in the hierarchy. Crystalline fists that hit like rocks, edges that cut skin, calculated brutality designed to hurt without killing, because killing would create complications, but pain was just education. She fought back, landed 2 decent hits that would have dropped a human but barely phased beings made of mineral compounds. Tried to scream, but a hand covered her mouth, 3 fingers pressing hard enough to split her lip against her teeth. It lasted 5 minutes. 5 minutes that felt like hours, that stretched and compressed time the way trauma always did. When they finally stepped back, she was on the floor, tasting copper, feeling pain catalog itself across her body in waves. Vrith looked down at her with his crystalline face shifting through colors she couldn't name. The cameras saw nothing. Your species' word against established members. Consider carefully how you proceed. They left her there, walked out like they'd just finished a routine meeting, leaving her bleeding on the pristine floor of humanity's grand achievement. 18 months into their membership in a civilization that promised justice and delivered it selectively. Kai pulled herself up slowly, using the wall for support. The cameras above her blinked steadily. Green lights, recording, always recording, except when they weren't. Station security accepted her report with all the enthusiasm of beings processing their 500th noise complaint. The Yatharian officer, whose name translated to something like Keeper of Order, but whom Kai mentally called glorified mall cop, typed her statement with 2 of his 6 appendages while the others handled what appeared to be lunch. And you're certain these were Toxarian delegates? I work with them regularly. I know their faces. Her split lip throbbed. The medical team had treated her injuries with clinical efficiency and absolutely no empathy, wrapped her cracked ribs, sealed her lacerations, and handed her painkillers like they were parking validation. Curious, our records show Ambassador Vrith and his delegation were attending a resource allocation hearing during this time frame. They have multiple witnesses. Then the witnesses are lying, or they weren't there, or someone changed the records. Keeper of Order made a sound like water burping through pipes, which was Yatharian for, "You're being tedious." I see. And the surveillance footage from conference room 7 Delta? You tell me. He pulled up the file, and she watched his appendages still. The cameras experienced quantum interference, complete data corruption for a 7-minute window. The maintenance sector generates significant electromagnetic activity that occasionally disrupts recording equipment. Convenient. Indeed, quite problematic. He set down his datapad and fixed her with 3 of his 5 eyes. Miss Okafur, perhaps you should consider that station life can be stressful. Humans are still adjusting to multi-species environments, and sometimes that adjustment manifests in unusual ways. Our psychological services are quite good. I'm not imagining being assaulted. Of course not. But perhaps you misidentified your attackers. Perhaps the incident was less severe than you remember. Trauma can distort perception. He gestured vaguely with an appendage. Without video evidence, and with the Toxarian delegation's alibi, there's little I can do beyond filing a report. She left before she said something that would get her deported. The human medical bay treated her injuries again, more thoroughly, with actual compassion from Dr. Okonkwo, who looked at her face and swore in 3 languages. This was deliberate. Yeah. Did you report it? Yeah. Let me guess. The cameras saw nothing. How do you know? He was quiet for a moment, his hands gentle as he checked her ribs. Because this is the fourth malfunction involving human personnel in 6 months. Different locations, different species involved, but always the same result. Cameras fail, reports dismissed, humans told they're confused. Why haven't I heard about this? Because Earth doesn't want panic, doesn't want to jeopardize our membership. So we smile and take it and hope enough time passes that we earn real respect instead of this performative tolerance. He finished his examination, stepped back. I'm sorry this happened to you, and I'm sorry I can't do more than patch you up and tell you to be careful. James found her in her quarters 2 hours later, took one look at her face, and his entire demeanor shifted into something cold and focused. Names. She told him, watched his jaw tighten with each word, saw his hands curl into fists that could probably bend station hull plating if properly motivated. The footage? Corrupted. Of course it was. He pulled out his personal tablet, the civilian model that every human carried because staying connected to Earth helped with the homesickness. Kai, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before answering. Okay. Do you trust me? Yes. Good. Because I'm going to make some calls, and things are going to get weird, and at some point, station administration is going to accuse you of fabricating evidence or causing diplomatic incidents, and I need you to hold firm. Can you do that? She thought about 5 minutes in conference room 7 Delta. About crystalline fists and calculated cruelty. About Keeper of Order's dismissive tone and the pattern Dr. Okonkwo had described. What are you planning? Something that should have been done 6 months ago. His smile could have cut steel. See, the thing about humans is that we're an anxious species. We don't trust easily. We've been lied to by enough governments and institutions that we developed a cultural habit of documenting everything ourselves. Personal records, private backups, redundant systems. Understanding hit her like a second assault. We've been recording. We've been recording everything. Every human on this station carries devices that are constantly backing up to personal servers. Video logs, audio recordings, location data. We call it social media or personal journaling or staying connected to family. The other species think it's cute. Primitive beings who need their security blankets. He pulled up a file on his tablet. You walked through the main concourse on your way to the maintenance sector. 3 different humans passed you, all streaming their daily walks back to Earth on a lag feed because it helps with homesickness. Those streams captured you in the background, heading toward maintenance, timestamp verified. Another file. Chief Engineer Kowalski was running diagnostics on environmental systems 2 corridors over. She uses her own equipment because she doesn't trust station sensors. Her equipment includes audio pickups with a 30-meter range. Another file. And then there's me. I've been worried about you since that commissary incident, so I've been tracking station surveillance patterns. When I noticed conference room 7 Delta went dark right when you were supposed to be there, I pulled every human data source I could find. Video, audio, location pings from personal devices. He turned the tablet toward her. We don't have a direct angle of the room itself, but we have you walking to 7 Delta alone. We have the Toxarians entering 2 minutes later. We have audio from Kowalski's equipment picking up impacts and voices through the walls. We have you leaving 47 minutes later, injured. And we have the Toxarians leaving clean and calm 30 seconds after you. It's not direct evidence. No, but it's a pattern And when combined with the other incidents Dr. Okonkwo mentioned, it tells a story. His smile widened. More importantly, every human on this station has been doing the same thing. Documenting, recording, backing up. We've been creating our own surveillance network without anyone realizing it, because why would they? We're the primitive species with our adorable personal devices. James, if you present this, they'll call it inadmissible. Unauthorized surveillance violates the transparency doctrine. The transparency doctrine regulates station-operated systems. It says nothing about personal recording devices. Besides, he stood, pocketed his tablet. I'm not presenting it to them, I'm presenting it to everyone. He left her sitting there, touching her injured face gently, feeling something unfamiliar kindling in her chest. It might have been hope. It might have been vindication. It might have been the simple, savage satisfaction of knowing that someone believed her enough to weaponize the truth. The thing about humans that the galactic community had fundamentally misunderstood was that they were a paranoid species by nature. Millennia of governments lying, institutions failing, and promises breaking had instilled a deep cultural mistrust of official narratives. So, they'd built their own networks. Personal devices that recorded constantly. Social media platforms that shared everything. Backup systems that assumed the primary systems would fail. Every human on Nexus Prime carried personal recording equipment. Not for surveillance, officially. Just for comfort. For connection to home. For sharing their historic first contact experience with billions back on Earth. But those devices recorded constantly, backed up to personal and Earth-based servers, created a shadow network of observation that the transparency doctrine had never thought to regulate, because why would you regulate something so primitive? James worked through the night, compiling footage from 14 different human sources. The 3 people who'd captured Kai in their daily walk videos. Chief Kowalski's audio equipment picking up the sounds of violence through maintenance sector walls. 5 different humans who'd passed through adjacent corridors, their devices capturing ambient data. The comm logs showing Kai's device going offline during the assault. Her medical records documenting injuries consistent with her testimony. And then there was Lieutenant Aisha Morrison, who worked in technical support and had been running her own audit of station surveillance systems because she didn't trust the uptime metrics. Her personal analysis showed that camera failures in sectors where humans worked occurred at 7 times the rate of other areas, and that these failures correlated strongly with incidents humans reported. The pattern was damning. The statistics were brutal. The implications were radioactive. James took it to Ambassador Martinez first. Martinez was in her 50s, had silver hair that made her look distinguished, and had spent 3 decades in diplomatic service learning how to smile while calculating exactly how to destroy your career. She watched the compiled evidence once, her expression unreadable. How many people have seen this? Just the sources and me. And Kai, obviously. Keep it that way. Martinez stood, straightened her jacket. I need to make some calls. To Earth. And then we're going to make a very different kind of call. The message went out on tight beam to Earth first. Priority Alpha, encrypted. It reached Geneva, bounced to the Secretary General's office, and from there to every human delegation, embassy, and research station in collective space. But it also went somewhere else. James, in a moment of beautiful malice, sent it to the human news networks. All of them. The compiled evidence, the statistics, the pattern of camera failures, and the story of what happened to Kai Okafur in Conference Room 7 Delta. Within 6 hours, it was the lead story on every major human network. Within 12 hours, It had been picked up by the smaller human colonies and research stations. Within 18 hours, it was being discussed on every human platform, shared across billions of personal devices, trending on social media with hashtags that roughly translated to, "They thought no one was watching." And humans being humans, they shared it beyond their own networks, forwarded it to non-human colleagues they trusted, posted it on multi-species forums, sent it to trade partners and cultural exchange contacts. Because humans had spent 18 months building relationships even as their governments negotiated treaties. And those relationships created channels that official oversight had never monitored. The footage went viral across 3 different species networks before the Nexus Prime administration even realized it existed. Ambassador Martinez requested an emergency session before the station's governing board on the 3rd day, not to plead, not to negotiate, to present evidence before 12 species representatives in a chamber designed to make you feel small and appropriately humbled by galactic wisdom. She presented with the calm of someone who'd already won and was just waiting for everyone else to catch up. Honored board members, thank you for convening. I understand the past 72 hours have been tumultuous. I'm here to explain why humanity has made certain information public and what we expect moving forward. The Yatharian chair made his burping sound. Ambassador, the unauthorized release of unverified recordings constitutes a serious breach of protocol. The Transparency Doctrine clearly states, the Transparency Doctrine regulates station-operated surveillance. It says nothing about personal devices or private recordings. We checked extensively. Martinez activated the holodisplay. This is Kai Okafur, human data analyst. 3 days ago, she was assaulted in Conference Room 7 Delta by Ambassador Vrith and 4 Toxarian delegates. Ambassador Vrith rose smoothly, his crystalline structure shifting through angry reds. These allegations have been investigated and dismissed. The human was clearly, "I'm not finished, Ambassador." Martinez's voice could have frozen atmospheres. When Miss Okafur reported this assault, she was told the surveillance footage showed nothing. Quantum interference, the official report claimed. Most unfortunate. However, she triggered the playback. The compilation played 3 different angles showing Kai walking to maintenance, audio of impacts and voices through walls, her device going offline, the Toxarians entering the same corridor minutes before, her emerging injured, the Toxarians leaving calm and unruffled. Timestamps verified, authenticated, cross-referenced with station logs. This is not direct footage of the assault itself, Martinez continued, but it establishes a clear pattern of events that corroborates Miss Okafur's testimony. More significantly, she pulled up Lieutenant Morrison's analysis. This is a statistical breakdown of surveillance failures across Nexus Prime over the past 18 months. Camera malfunctions in sectors with human personnel occur at 7 times the baseline rate. These malfunctions correlate with 67% of all incidents humans have reported. The chamber was silent. The interesting thing about humans, Martinez said, her tone conversational, is that we're a deeply paranoid species. We've been lied to enough times that we don't trust official systems, so we built our own. Every human on this station carries personal recording devices. We've been documenting our entire experience here. Video logs, audio recordings, location data. We call it social media. You call it primitive. We call it insurance. She pulled up more files. Since releasing this information 3 days ago, 17 other humans have come forward with evidence of incidents that were dismissed due to convenient surveillance failures. We now have personal recordings that contradict official narratives in each case. Different locations, different species involved, but always the same pattern. Official cameras fail, human testimony dismissed, attackers protected. The Draxthi representative leaned forward. Ambassador, even if these recordings are authentic, the proper procedure would be to submit them through official channels, not to broadcast them across multiple networks in clear violation of proper procedure. Martinez laughed, and it was not a diplomatic sound. Miss Okafur followed proper procedure. She filed a report. She provided testimony. She cooperated with investigation. And she was told she was confused, stressed, probably imagining things. Meanwhile, the beings who assaulted her walked free because the cameras recorded nothing. She gestured to the frozen images on the display. Your cameras recorded nothing. Our cameras recorded everything. She pulled up another display, this one showing network statistics. In the past 72 hours, this footage has been viewed by approximately 4 billion humans and forwarded to contacts across 17 different species networks. It's currently trending on 6 different multi-species social platforms. The non-human response has been illuminating. Many of your own citizens are asking questions about surveillance reliability, incident investigation protocols, and whether the transparency doctrine actually provides transparency or just the appearance of it. The implication hung in the air like a neutron bomb. So here's what's going to happen, Martinez continued, her tone hardening. You're going to conduct an independent investigation into surveillance system failures across all collective facilities. You're going to implement redundant monitoring that includes external verification. You're going to revise incident investigation protocols to include consideration of alternative evidence sources. And she looked directly at Vrith. You're going to prosecute Ambassador Vrith and his accomplices under applicable assault statutes. Vrith's crystalline face cycled through colors that probably indicated outrage. This is absurd. The Toxarian government will not tolerate. The Toxarian government, said the Corlithian representative quietly, is currently dealing with its own internal crisis as this footage circulates through our networks. Several major Corlithian trade unions have suspended contracts with Toxarian mining operations pending investigation. The political pressure is substantial. Martinez smiled. It was not a nice smile. Transparency works best when everyone can see what's happening, not just through official channels controlled by those in power, but through the eyes of those experiencing it. Humans learned that lesson centuries ago. We're happy to teach it to you now. The session descended into chaos. Delegations clustered in urgent discussions. Vrith and his accomplices were detained pending investigation, and the Toxarian government issued a statement about isolated incidents and individuals who failed to uphold their standards, which fooled absolutely no one. The investigation took 2 months. 2 months during which human-recorded footage kept surfacing, showing incident after incident that official systems had mysteriously missed. 2 months during which other species began implementing their own personal recording networks, because if the humans had taught them anything, it was that official transparency and actual transparency were sometimes very different things. Vrith and his accomplices were tried and convicted under Nexus Prime assault statutes. The Toxarians, facing economic pressure from multiple species who decided that maybe the humans had a point about accountability, accepted the verdict with as much grace as crystalline beings could fake. The reforms took longer. New surveillance protocols with triple redundancy. Independent monitoring committees with representatives from all member species. Revised investigation procedures that considered alternative evidence sources. Training programs about unconscious bias and selective enforcement. None of it would have happened if the cameras had actually recorded what they were supposed to. Kai watched the verdict from Earth, where she'd been reassigned while the station sorted itself out. She testified via secure transmission, answered questions from investigators, and had received approximately 10,000 messages of support from humans and non-humans alike. James visited her there, 4 weeks after the verdict. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Weird being famous for getting beaten up." "You're famous for being right when everyone told you you weren't. For refusing to disappear when that's what they wanted." He sat beside her on the bench, overlooking the diplomatic compound. "You changed how the entire galaxy handles accountability." "I didn't do anything. You found the evidence. Martinez went to war. You reported it. You insisted it happened even when powerful beings told you it didn't. You trusted that documentation mattered even when official documentation failed." He smiled. "That's everything." She thought about that. About 5 minutes in a room where civilization's promises evaporated. About cameras that saw nothing and cameras that saw everything. About the careful system of rules that only worked when people decided they applied to everyone. "They really thought no one was watching," she said finally. "Like we were too primitive to have our own eyes." "Yeah." James stretched. "Turns out the primitive species had better surveillance than the advanced ones. There's probably a lesson there about assumptions." 6 months later, Kai returned to Nexus Prime, walked through maintenance sector past conference room 7 Delta without hesitation, past cameras that now had triple redundancy and independent verification. The room looked exactly the same. The cameras blinked their steady green lights, recording everything that happened there, which was usually nothing more interesting than routine meetings. But now, everyone knew. Official cameras recorded for the official record. Personal cameras recorded for the truth. And the truth was that civilization only worked when someone was watching. All the someones. Not just the powerful ones. The galaxy learned that lesson the hard way, delivered by the species they dismissed as too primitive to matter. And if there was something darkly amusing about the newest members teaching the established powers about accountability through social media and smartphone cameras, well, the universe had always had a sense of humor. It just wasn't usually subtle about delivering the punchline.